So welcome everyone to this session on accessible digital information, training and libraries, reducing discrimination for persons with disability. My name is Gunela Astbrink and I am the co-organizer together with Winston Roberts. We have a panel of experts, all with a lived experience of disability. They are Manique Gunaratne of the Employers Federation of Ceylon, Vashkar Bhattachearjee of the Access to Information Program of the Prime Minister's Office in Bangladesh, and Srinidhi Raghava of Rising Flame in India. We should also have sign language interpreter in India. So if you want to optimize the interpreter, please pin the interpreter video by clicking on the 3 dots at the top right-hand part of your screen, if you can see that. And also there's a reminder for us all to speak more slowly to make it easier for the captioning and the interpreters. So it's over to Anju Mangal, who is the Vice Chair of the APrIGF MSG and our moderator for this session. Thank you very much, Anju.
Thank you so much, Gunela. Bula and namaste, everyone. I am your humble moderator, and I look forward to moderating this great discussion. I hope everyone is well despite the challenges you face today. The opening plenary earlier today set the scene, particularly what Vashkar said, one of our main speakers at the panel. We need to have an all-inclusive approach when dealing with challenges. And we're all grappling with so many challenges. I mean, today I also grappled with a few challenges in terms of, connecting to Zoom or trying to figure out the features. So we're all in this together, as I always say to everyone. So before I start the formal session, we have a few housekeeping rules. Please mute your mic during the session and ensure that you don't distract our panelists. You can keep your video on. And for our friends with disability, please note that we have sign language interpretation, as Gunela mentioned, and live captioning as well. If you have any problems, please send a message to the chat forum or raise your hand now and our lovely secretariat will assist. And if we suddenly have any Zoom bombers or naughty hackers trying to join the show, feel free to remind them that we are resilient and nothing will disrupt this session. So on that note, I just want to again welcome our beautiful and wonderful panelists. And we want to make this fun and interactive. So please make sure that we have lots of discussions and thoughts, and then we want to hear from you. So without any further ado, I'm going to ask the panelists the first question. What has been your experience as a person with, sorry about that. Sorry, what has been your experience as a person with disability during COVID-19? And did you face any barriers in accessing information on COVID-19? So let's start with Srinidhi.
Hi, thank you so much for introducing this panel and for all of you for being here. We at Rising Flame, we work out of India, and we did a small research a while ago to see how COVID-19 impacted women with disabilities in particular. And one of the biggest challenges we saw was that there was a huge inaccessible barrier when things moved from physical to digital. In many ways, women, especially deaf and hard of hearing women, complained about the fact that lip reading had become more difficult because captioning was not provided in their college meetings, in their school meetings, or even in their office meetings. So this was one of the huge barriers that they had. The other one was that a lot of information that has been circulating around COVID-19 has been circulated in image format, which makes it inaccessible for all vision and blind people across the country. So they are dependent on their family to mediate the conversation for them, right? So independent access to information on COVID-19 was pretty low for blind and vision impaired people because of all the information that was being passed around in PDFs and images, etc. One of the biggest things that we heard is that in India, the COVID-19 tracking app, which is Arogya Setu, has had a lot of discussions around the fact that it is, and continues to be blind and vision impaired screen readers inaccessible. Additionally, we have also seen that a lot of the payment apps, which is online banking, are also not accessible for screen reader users. So in short, out of 82 women that we spoke to as part of our research, 75 of them complained about inaccess. So that's a huge percentage, even if you take the number is small, 82 in a country as large as India, but 75 of them complaining is a huge percentage of people who had troubles during this period. Thank you.
Thanks, Nidhi. And over to Manique, are you there? Please.
Yes, I am there.
Share your thoughts.
Yes. Apart from what Nidhi said, in Sri Lanka also, we had to face many challenges because to address these issues, we didn't have proper data. The data was not available, who's staying where, to how to reach these people. It was not available at a national level. And also the internet facility was, in rural areas, because most of these people with disabilities come from rural areas. The internet facilities, the signals were not available, and most of the people with disabilities did not have devices to access this information. So when it comes to devices for persons with disabilities with screen reading software, it's expensive. So the internet facility was not there, and also the devices, the technology, the devices were not available, and for individuals it was not available. And also some of these people didn't have the knowledge on using these special apps like Zoom and other online facilities. But through the Employers Federation of Ceylon Specialized Training and Disability Resource Center, our trainees, we have trained them in technology, how to access these online platforms. But they were well off, but others faced difficulties. And also when it was a lockdown situation, even to pay the internet bills or put money to reload the cellular data, they couldn't go because the shops were closed and online banking not accessible. No sign language interpretation to access information and banking facilities. Those are the barriers that we faced hugely due to lockdown and lockdown situation.
Thank you, Manique. Vashkar, over to you. Maybe you could share some thoughts. I know you've already mentioned quite a lot at the opening plenary, but please, for our new users and viewers.
Thank you, Anju, and my great teacher who have taught me the Twitter, how to use Twitter. Thank you for your support. I am just tweeting again and again. So, however, there was a real challenge we are facing till today because of the pandemics. First time we realized our service, especially e-service, are not accessible for people with disabilities, because previously maybe sometime we have taken support from my colleagues and other people, but this time as we are staying in home, we really require service to access by our own. Even is a question of my dignity. So when first in the beginning we find that information are not accessible, such as people with disabilities are not getting accessible information, and we just started lobbying with the government to make this information accessible. In my country, we have where I am also working, there is an organization called Young Power in Social Exclusion. They have just innovated some multimedia talking book, which is full text, full audio, and now accessible ebook on COVID-19. And we just follow the WHO guideline and also the Bangladesh government guideline, and that was widely circulated among the different our groups members and library members. And also we lobby with the Ministry of Health. So they have just started the sign language broadcasting whenever there is any information is coming from the government side regarding COVID. So they just use the sign language. But unfortunately, in the television, when there is a sign, but some companies, they're giving ad on the sign. So sometimes people with hearing and speech disability are not able to understand what they're telling in the sign, because these people are using as their promotion, like advertisement, etc. And another issues we have faced difficulties, there was a helpline has started like 333, which was completely inaccessible for the people with disabilities in the beginning. Only individual can call and take service. Only audio was there. So that was another challenge, because parents and friends on other cannot call on behalf of anyone. So we just started again working with the government, and we started to ensure that everyone can take this service by using text, audio, etc. So 333 became accessible. Then sign language user and other people, even parents from neurodevelopment disability, they can take the service from using 333. And lastly, there was one website has developed, that is covid.gov.bd. And that website is the one-stop information service for during COVID pandemics by the government. So we just started to work with the government to make it accessible by following W3C 2.1. Still, I don't know how much accessible is it, but we have tried, and we will try again and again. Thank you.
Yes, it's all about keep trying, right? There are many without affordable and assistive devices, and people even living in rural and remote communities. There are a lot of people with disabilities in these communities, and they still struggle. It's not just about internet connectivity, but just struggle to have access to even information, just general information. So I can also understand. And when we talk about disability, there's also mental illness, and lots of people struggle with this, especially during COVID-19, people not having access to face-to-face therapists, or even given the option to visit the hospital. So there are lots of difficulties, and I think it's important that people start thinking about some good solutions. So my next question is to all the panelists again. Explain in very, very simple words to our users, to our viewers, what does it mean when you talk about reducing discrimination for persons with disability in the digital world? And use your personal experience or even your professional experience. Thanks. Oh, sorry, Nidhi, let's start with you.
Okay, that's great. I think a lot of the points that were made by both Vashkar and Manique also resonate very heavily in India, and we have very similar. Let's say in the South Asian region, we have very similar situations, especially access to technology and internet facilities in general. I think one of the biggest ways to reduce discrimination is to incorporate the idea that disabled people exist while we make applications, technologies, websites, content, right? So I think that at the core of the initial conversation, if there is no conversation around the existence of people with disabilities, then accessibility is always an add-on. It is not built into the design. And if it is not built into the design, then you're bound to discriminate against some group of disabled people, right? So I would think that as developers, as social workers, as counselors, as technologists, as tech enthusiasts, we all should be thinking about disabled people using tech actively, right? As creators, as producers, as consumers. Otherwise, I think discrimination is bound to replicate in the situation.
Thank you for that. Manique, would you like to add?
Yes. Discrimination. We as people with disabilities, we get marginalized and discriminated. But if people can, think that equal opportunities is very important. So especially when it comes to internet, the internet for all concept should be adopted. To address this issue and to reduce discrimination, what we did is from before, we started training people with disabilities in the very grassroots level. Like we created mobile app concept. So we go to the grassroots level, create a mobile lab with the laptops and internet facilities, and train people with disabilities how to surf the internet and gather the information they require. And on the other hand, at the same time, we train people with disabilities, people with non-disabilities, especially web developers, on how to make websites accessible. So by this twin track approach, I think we were able to, reduce discrimination to a certain extent, not to a large extent, but we have taken an initiative. So we are planning to strengthen it further so that maybe in the future also we will have to face many difficulties with lockdown situations like this. So we hope we will be able to strengthen this situation.
Great. Thank you so much, Manique. Vashkar, would you like to add, please?
Yes, Anju, if you have a rice to eat, at least I have to have a bread. so there will be no discrimination. At least we have some food for it. So just what I am trying to mean, whenever there is any service for the citizen, whatever service is, internet or any other service, that must be accessible and affordable for all, including people with disability, rural community, indigenous people, language minority, anyone who need. I don't want to forget the women. Sometimes we forget the women, especially women with disabilities. So we need to design our service and product such a way then everyone can enjoy equal basis with others. Then there will be no discrimination. And sometimes even inclusion work also not work properly, because by the name of inclusion, we often forget the people with disabilities. We often forget the most vulnerable group among the people with disabilities, that is women with disabilities, neurodevelopment disabilities, psychosocial disabilities, etc. Disability also a diverse representation of diverse group. Or if we only see the one types of disability, that's not really mean anything. There is people who have the learning disability, who have the attention deficiency. So many other types of disabilities are exist. So whatever service we will design, we must keep in mind that there is some people who have to have a special attention. And I want to say one thing by recalling UN Convention of Rights of Persons with Disability, we need to ensure the reasonable accommodation, and we must respect the Article 9 accessibility and Article 21 of the UNCRPD.
Indeed, agree, completely agree. And what Nidhi and Manique also said, in terms of design thinking approach and making sure that all users are part of the product design is critical. And I think our viewers here, if you're a developer, I think you need to keep this in mind, that when you are designing a product, keep everyone in mind, and particularly persons with disability, or rope them in during your discussions so that they can give you some really good ideas. So I know all of the panelists have mentioned women, youth, just briefly. And we talk about that women and youth with disabilities are less likely to get digital skills and training or even work. Can you tell us why, one, and how can we challenge the work culture and mindset to ensure that women or even youth with disabilities are given an equal opportunity, especially in the digital economy? Nidhi, I'll start with you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Anju. I think that both Vashkar and Manique have touched upon it briefly in the conversation. But and like Manique said, that in disability is more prevalent in areas where there is malnourishment, poverty, etc. So what we see in India is that when there is multiple discrimination at the intersections, and there is one of the discriminations is gender, the likelihood of the boy with disability getting access to technology earlier than the girl with disability getting access to technology is very, very common, especially in the situation where both of them need to have, say, access to remote schools, and the house only has one device. The chances are that the boy with disability will be given the device, right? Because there is so much discrimination based on gender, as well as disability that is placed on the girl with disability, that we see often that they are not exposed to technology, that there's heavy input and attempts to ensure that the girl can get married or is possibly eligible to get married. So access to technology, schools, etc., all become lower. The other trouble that we often see is that we don't necessarily, I mean, there is the gender discrimination angle of it, which means that girls who have to go outside their village to study often never make it to higher education schools or to higher secondary schools or to colleges. And if disability is added to that equation, it becomes worse. So we see that the difficulties are within gender and disability come together, then the chances of access to assistive devices, to mobility aids, to technologies becomes poorer, and access to internet is then further marginalized for them.
Thanks. Manique, would you like to add? I know you briefly mentioned as well, but if you want to add a bit more.
Yes, thanks, Anju. Adding to what Nidhi said, women with disabilities, we are marginalized, maybe triple handicap. One, being a woman. Two, being a woman with a disability. And three, if you are not empowered, then you become triple handicap. So during this COVID situation and in the future as well, for women with disabilities, if the technology is given to them and the proper training is given to them, and working from home concept will be good for women, because all of you know that a woman, a mother, plays the mother's role. So we're looking after children, the family, the household. So sometimes it's easy for women with disabilities to work from home if the proper technology and the devices are provided to them, because then she can look after the home management as well. So this COVID situation, working from home concept, especially for women, it was, it was good for them. So if we, even in the future, working from home concept, flexible working hours, if these are implemented, especially women with disabilities will be benefited. So for internet, getting this knowledge, and for women, women with disabilities, they don't get the proper information and lack of knowledge, especially on parenting, home management. Those information is very important for women with disabilities. I think through this COVID situation and lockdown situation, some of these women, started working from home and learning this technology. Those are the good things which this COVID brought us.
Totally agree. Bhaskar, maybe you could mention around youth and, how to change mindset of people, especially, governments that are designing policies in this. So maybe outline that. Thanks.
Anju, firstly, I would like to appreciate today's organizer, Gunela, and our team. I'm seeing I am only man here. So that means women are really empowered, at least in APrIGF here in my.
Yes.
So we need to understand potentiality of the humanity. We just, and also in our region we require a positive discrimination. Government and policy level positive discrimination is highly required. In our country for women there is a quota, for employment, education, etc. So these types of positive discrimination is highly recommended to engage the women with disabilities in ICT and internet. Unfortunately, we are not saying many women with disabilities are using technology. Maybe they are sometimes user, but they are not coming as a programmer or as a trainer, etc. This is one big challenge we are facing in our region. But the things are not that much dark, because we are seeing money people who are working hard to bring the change. And I strongly believe government policy, we have a law, it's called Persons with Disability Rights and Protection Act 2013. And in that law also, we are trying to, unfortunately, there was not much talked about the women with disabilities. And national women policy, yes, there is a very clearly mention about the women with disabilities. So we need some kind of positive discrimination to increase the women participation in tech, especially women with disabilities, and internet, etc.
Thank you so much, Vashkar. I just want to let you know that you were breaking a little, so maybe it's your connectivity, just to let you know. So
Can I add something?
Oh, sorry.
Can I add something? Sorry.
Yes, please go ahead. And then we'll go on to the question and answer. Yeah, go ahead, Nina.
I think that the specificity of women with disabilities access to information is also about sexual and reproductive right information, which often is not present in accessible formats. Right. So this is both a feminist issue and a disability justice issue. So as well as a tech issue. Right. So I think I just wanted to bring in that a lot of women do turn to the internet for information about sexual and reproductive health rights, about access to this information, about their bodies, etc. This is further hampered for women with disabilities, and I just wanted to point that out.
That's an interesting one, and I never thought of that actually. So thank you for that. I learned something new today.
Anju,
yes,
I would like to add. Yeah. Here, I would like to point to one very important point. You know, even myself, I didn't know about the sexual and reproductive health issues. Even I have no knowledge regarding sexual relations and etc. Even I faced lots of mental difficulties when I got married. I think my partner also faced such types of I think frustration because I didn't have any knowledge. I never ever read any books. So what we done? We just create some accessible materials for women with disabilities and people with vision disabilities, learning disabilities. Then they can access the information regarding sexual and reproductive health.
And just one point to add, during this COVID situation, there were a lot of gender-based violence happening, and there were some hotlines available for complaints, but people with disabilities did not have, especially hearing impaired persons do not have access to hotlines, and these lines were not accessible. And some of these people were not able to reach these hotlines or services due to lack of information. They didn't get the proper information about these support, and there were a lot of gender-based violence among people with disabilities during the lockdowns time.
Really good points. And you know what, it brings back to the thought about cyber safety. When we are designing programs on cyber safety for girls, women, anyone for that matter, sometimes we don't necessarily take into account what the persons with disability, how do they respond to some of these issues that are going on. And I think this is critical because to me, as a moderator, you've kind of opened my eyes in terms of what I need to think about in the future as well. So, you know, without, we're sort of not running out of time, but I want to give the audience a chance to ask a question or even share their thoughts, because I said that it was going to be interactive. So I'll, because there are also direct messages to me and also on the chat forum that I can see, I will give the floor to Cheryl first, and then to Winston. And then there was a comment from someone on the health, I think it was health, yoga related wellness programs. But Cheryl, over to you.
Thanks very much, Anju. And thank you so much to the panelists. This is a fabulous discussion and hitting just some of the high notes of things across the whole diversity and discrimination issues that many of us work in and are aware of, but maybe this pandemic can be used as a tipping point to perhaps coalesce some of the thoughts and some of the work that all of you are doing, and many of us are you know, in awe of the energy that's put in. But it seems to me that there are some themes that we might be able to pick up from, even just from what we've spoken about today. You know, I mean, Manique, you're talking about how the shift to looking at work from home may turn the thinking and allow some of the change and gender bias that's associated with, you know, keep your women home and looking after children, as opposed to doing something else in a family life, where of course one can do more than just one thing. You know, not just be a breeding machine if you happen to be a female. The access to the information and material, and it's not even just sexual identity and sexual practice, it's health related as well. When you look at isolated incidents in Africa, for example, Henrietta, if she's on, would know a lot about this with work she's been involved with over the years, where, you know, it's only 1 or 2 bad outcomes from breeding too much too soon in a girl's life means they feel really isolated. And yet internet and digital competency, as I'm now going to call it, thanks to this morning's opening session, digital competency, if we can get them access to that, then the 100 in several areas can come together and offer peer support and maybe see their way through. So it's the mental health aspects, there's all these bits happening. Maybe this is an opportunity for more of these very worthy pieces of work to come together and find the best ways forward. And Gunela, it reminds me a little bit about a mantra we used to use years back, which was, you know, universal design is good for everyone. Well, I think there's some of that that might be able to be, that thinking that might be able to be brought back into some of these issues again today. Thanks for the opportunity and keep up the conversation. It's fantastic.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. You know, these are really good points, and obviously it's not about me. I mean, I want to have this discussion too, but I will now give the floor to Winston because he has a question. And then, yeah, Winston first, please. Winston.
Thank you, Anju. My question is to the panelists, and I'm speaking really on behalf of one of the organizing civil society groups behind this workshop, not the most important one, but one of them. And my question is, do you believe that in your country, you get enough support for disabled people from the libraries, the community libraries, where people, where sighted people, abled people normally go for information? Do your libraries provide similar good quality services, understanding, compassionate services to people with disability? And if not, what do you suggest can be done about that? Thank you.
Great. Nidhi, we'll start with you first.
I think that it's somewhat present and somewhat absent. I also want to point out that in India, it's the percentage of disabled people who live in rural situations is almost 69%, which means that most of the disabled population in India lives in rural spaces where access to libraries itself is poor because access to literacy is poor. So I think in the educational institutions, there are efforts being made to make libraries accessible, but I wouldn't think that it's being done at a public library system basis, but more on an educational institution basis. That's how much information I do have about this.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, if I add on to it, in Sri Lanka also, if I give a simple answer, no, public libraries are not accessible for people with disabilities, but at institutional level or maybe at university level, there may be accessible libraries. Only the international platforms like Bookshare, especially for vision impaired persons, they are the accessible online libraries available.
Thank you. Bhaskar?
Around us, there is a number of initiatives are going on. We know that there is an accessible book consortium, which is facilitated by the WIPO, and they are just working with the different publishers to get the accessible books. We are talking about the born accessibility. Whenever there will be any printed books available for the people, that book, same time we will get in such a format which we can use, such as Braille, accessible ebook, multimedia talking book, etc. And one of the biggest challenges for accessing books, that is text to speech. In our region, still we don't have good quality text to speech. That is one challenge for us. But we are making more accessible books in our region. I think in Bangladesh, we have all the textbooks grade 1 to grade 12 accessible. That means we are providing Braille, accessible ebook, and multimedia talking book. So this is the one example for the country.
Great, thank you so much, Bhaskar. Now I would invite Binod, if you could just have a few words. I think you're based in Nepal, if I'm correct.
Yes, Anju.
Go ahead, please.
All right. My question is for all the panelists. Well, I'm from academic background, so for me, disability is not just restricted within physical or cognitive impairments. Yes, of course, physical and cognitive impairments do have a bigger bite in this. But one can be disabled in any forms because disability, of course, is a social choice. If the society does not provide an accessible access to anything, anyone could be disabled. In Nepal, when we talk about disability, we also talk about gender, geography, the marginalized group, and other things as well. So I think there are certain guidelines that web developers and app developers have to follow while developing their products and services. But even saying so, how are we effectively, impelling them to follow those standards? We don't see many developers and app developers actually following that, despite of there being guidelines. So how would we advocate so that they would follow them, at least minimum guidelines, making it accessible for all?
Nidhi?
Yeah, thanks so much, Anju. I think there are some assumptions in place that I would like to sort of counter here, because in our country, for instance, we recently launched an accessible Hotstar Disney campaign, and Disney Plus, which is an American product which is bought by Hotstar in India. Disney Plus is completely accessible, and when Disney Hotstar came to India, it became inaccessible. So we launched a campaign, and we asked, it was a public campaign, so lots of blind and vision impaired users signed the petition to ask for making it accessible. And what we were told by Disney Hotstar's PR is like, the whole world, everything is inaccessible, why are you targeting us? Right? So I think the product is that the assumption is that everything is inaccessible and nobody needs to make anything accessible. So though there exists web content accessibility guidelines for everybody, I think the awareness of the guidelines, especially in developing countries and in countries as big as ours, is very poor. But I think additionally there is, like I was saying in my first comment, we do not see the world as a place with disabled people in it. So our design does not automatically incorporate their existence, right? So unless we change the way we are thinking about the world, it will be very hard for us to design apps that are accessible or design websites that are accessible. So that would be my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Manique and Vashkar, would you like to add?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
So, we are just listening about the internet website accessibility, etc. There is many international standards such as W3C 2.1, DAISY standard, EPUB 3. So a standard are exist. And also what we know, we have the policy and guideline in our region also. Many countries have their own accessibility policy. The problem is that implementation. Our implementation is very, very poor, and also monitoring. We'll monitor. And another issue is like tendency of violating law. We are making law, policy, international commitments, but we are violating them. Nobody really care to violating. I'm really sometimes feel bad when I saw that UN agencies are reluctant about ensuring accessibility for their information and service. Because even though they are the custodian of the UN Convention of Rights of Persons with Disability, and they have the Article 9 and Article 21, which ensure the accessibility of all e-service, books, technology, whatever exists. So UN agency must take the lead. They have some kind of influence in our region, in our country, and also there's a commitment by our countries. So who will monitor that? This is the question.
Yeah. Good question.
Yes, when it comes to accessibility, I must say people always should think it's nothing about us without us. starting from the policy level, from top level, whoever making decisions should include people with disabilities into their committees or at policy level who are drafting policies. I'm happy that the Internet Governance Forums included people with disabilities and also women with disabilities to this forum to make nothing about us without us and the Internet for all, the concept, reality.
Very good point. That's really good point because our secretariat has gone out of their way to even provide live captioning, and Gunela and the team for sign language interpretation. This is what we call all-inclusive approach. Now I'm going to apply discrimination here before Amrita, because Amrita is on the MSG as one of our members and she is the incoming vice chair. I will give it to the fellow because fellows before MSG members. Swaran, please go ahead.
Hello, everybody. I hope you can see me.
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm in somewhat of a remote area, so I hope you can hear me clearly. Anyway, interesting insights into the topics we've been talking about so far. Just a little bit of background about me. This is my first time, and I'm really, really very excited. There's some issues that I've been thinking about. I'm also an academic. And my research area is, I'm currently doing a doctorate in assistive technologies. So I'll tell you very honestly, it took me about 2 years to understand the topic itself, about disabilities itself, about the various types of disabilities. I've traveled around to try to understand if, for example, issues of people who have a mental illness, are they the same in different regions in the world? And I'm trying to see what the issues are and where do they stem from. Now, personally speaking, I think what we've seen in the Pacific, our issues are quite central to us, even though there may be people who are blind in the Pacific region, in Asia Pacific, in the European region, but then there's some other issues that are entailed within those subcategories itself. Now, for example, in Fiji, in the world, in fact, we talk about digital divide, we talk about the gender disparity, we talk about the issues pertaining to developing countries. So these are issues on their own, but then we need to further look into the depths of these issues and see which of these issues are Pacific centric, or which one of these issues are pertaining to East Asia, Southeast Asia, or and there could be many different facets to this issue. Demographics, culture, they play a huge part in these things. Now, these are just some of the issues that I'm thinking out loud. If anyone could be thinking about maybe some sort of a framework, I mean, how do we, in a nutshell, how do we address these issues? I know that there's no, one-time fix, so there's really no magic pill to it. It takes a lot of persistence, a lot of advocacy. But at the same time, coming from a research background, I'm thinking, is there some sort of a research we can do? Is there some sort of a framework or a standard that needs to be developed specifically for the Pacific region or the Asia Pacific region? And then we address those issues according to where they stem from. Because if we talk about disabilities, and if we talk about women being marginalized and even further discriminated in the wake of COVID-19 and having access, then let's think about, are these issues of today? I mean, gender disparity has been there, discrimination has been there for a very long time. So I believe a holistic approach would be good, but explaining that to someone, because when people ask us, okay, you guys are doing research in assistive technology, you guys are doing research in the areas of disability, but what are the outcomes? So I believe there's a framework, and those frameworks should be developed in conjunction. Obviously, we cannot talk about disability without including people who are disabled, without including people who are policymakers, right? So I was thinking if there's a way, to fix this issue in a holistic way, where we could involve all the right stakeholders and perhaps come up with a framework and then start tackling them as we go along, just like the OSI model, So something similar to that. Is there anyone who'd like to take that question on, or any part of my big paragraph?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Swaran. Nidhi, would you like to start? Or anyone?
I think she has you've placed a huge a conundrum in front of all of us. But I think step one would be gathering data. we don't have very much, especially in a country, especially in India. I'm not sure about the other members in the region. We don't have enough data around who's using technologies, what kind of technologies exist, etc. And what are the impediments to accessing technologies is something that we just know based on some research, that it's because of circumstances, it's because of culture, like you're saying, it's also because of accessibility in terms of money, right? So affordability, that is. So I think some of these conversations are just starting in many of our countries. So it is about asking the difficult questions and ensuring that more and more people ask the difficult questions. So I think data collection, some research would be useful as a good place for us to start.
Good point. Vashkar or Manique, would you like to add?
Can you hear me?
Yes, please, Vashkar, go ahead.
I think, just 4 decades ago, when I was a student, I never ever got a single book in accessible format. My mother read for me, I listen. My friends read for me, I listen. I never ever read a book because there was no technology. Books are available for persons with vision disability. Without a book, I got a graduation from university. Just believe me, this is the reality. Today, we just ensure technology, books, even though it is not enough, but still there is lots of progress has happened. In my university, 20 years ago, they didn't allow me to enter. I started hunger strike to enter in the university. Finally, they allow me. Today, I am leading the process to make the university inclusive. In that time, I was one. Now there is 150 are studying. So days are changing. Maybe there is some frustration. Our expectation is not met, but still we have lots of progress. And only technology giving this progress to us. Thank you.
Yes, I must add that it is much better than what it was so many years ago, but long way to go. It's progressing little by little, a lot of awareness going on, not like those days. I think long way to go.
Thank you so much. Gunela, I'll just get you to respond quickly to Swaran, since you've raised your hand, and then we'll go to Amrita. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you, Anju. And sorry, Amrita, you'll be the lucky last, I'd say, in the comments. But I couldn't resist just mentioning a couple of things for Swaran, and I'll be happy to talk offline later on. But obviously, linking in with relevant disability organisations, and in the Pacific, there has been some studies done on usage of ICT by persons with disability. There is some raw data, so getting that knowledge first, and then linking in with organisations. And I'll follow up with lots of other details. Looking forward to talking with you, Swaran.
Great, thank you, Gunela. Amrita, over to you. My apologies, but you can hate me later. Go ahead.
Thanks, Anju. Wonderful discussion, I must say. Most of the points have been said, but what I would like to add, and coming from what Bhaskar said, is that governments are interested to address this issue. However, there are steps being taken. They are not adequate. There is more to be done. Now the issue is how to accelerate the pace so that the people who are not getting those digital services, the disabled, can get it faster. So the best way is, my understanding is many times the different governments or the departments within government work in silos. They need to speak to each other. They need to share information between each other. They need to share information and have more conversation with civil societies or organizations who are actually working on it, or even companies who come up with technology, so that each can empathize the issue and work better. Simultaneously, the best practices which perhaps have worked in certain countries need to be shared. There has to be more sharing because what worked in some country may work on another. Yes, each country, each area within a country may have some specific problems, which could be perhaps 25% of it, but balance 75% is more or less common across regions, across nations. So I think more talking within different departments, or sharing best practices to actually work is important, because in this global world it is different to work in silos. You would not get anywhere. Thanks a lot, Anju.
Thank you so much, Amrita. Does anyone from the panel would like to respond to Amrita?
I mean, I think I'm completely on board. I think in India, it's also the implementation is harder because of the number of departments we do have. And one of the troubles is that, say, the Women and Child Department doesn't talk to the Information and Broadcasting Department. The Information and Broadcasting Department and the Disability Department don't have conversations. So a lot of the government information around COVID, especially in these times, came in inaccessible formats, right? We announced lockdown without a sign language interpreter. So I think that the ideas are, the steps we have taken towards increasing access has indeed become large. But I think when the population is bigger, it takes a longer time. But I think also that the intention behind pushing access at every level is needed. It cannot only be the disability department's job to push access. It has to be part of every government department.
Thanks. Thank you, Nidhi. Okay, I think I will just hand it over to one more person, and then we will have to close because this meeting room will automatically close. So we have to be careful of that as well. So I'll hand it over to Ashirwad. Would you like to say a few words? I think you mentioned something on the chat.
Yes, Anju, thank you so much. Well, it's not much about about disability or what we can do. It's my general feeling that I have, because most of us are in government, are in democratic government. Our government are democratic, so usually their focus is on votes, and the number of votes that come is from the majority rather than minority. So obviously the governments and people in position do talk about inclusion and all the things because it's kind of fancy word for them, but the action on the grassroots level or ground level is so less. So I would suggest that we could use this platform to lobby with our government on the international commitments that they have made with UN or in achieving the SDGs. So we as an individual level, we could impel our government, lobby them with the international commitments, and also make them understand, raise awareness about actually why is it needed, why should people with special needs be included in all the conventions that are being done. How can we move forward towards social justice? And if we all effectively do this continually, maybe someday soon we'll have a better world that we're trying to make. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashirwad. Now, I just want to go back to the panelists because we don't have enough time. So maybe one important key message to our viewers here, who can also go back to their governments, their civil societies, their policymakers, whoever. 1 point each, please. Nidhi, first you.
I just typed it in the chat box, but I would like to repeat it, that accessibility for all, it should be part of all our advocacy. It cannot be part of only advocacy by disabled people. Everybody needs to get on this boat so we can all advocate for accessibility.
Okay, great. Thank you.
In my opinion, nothing about us without us. Engage us, involve us, then you will get a good result.
Good. Manique.
Yes, it's important to change the mindset from sympathy to empathy, dependence to independence, hidden to open, segregation to integration, and exclusion to inclusion, like the Asia Pacific Regional Internet Governance Forum did today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now but stay, don't go because we have a few more minutes left. I will now get Gunela to just say a few words. To our viewers, Gunela and Winston have been working behind the scenes to get this great session going. So it's not just me. or it's not me at all, actually, it's these amazing people. So I will get Gunela to say a few words, please.
Thank you very much, Anju. Thank you very much, Vashkar, Manique, and Srinidhi. And thank you for the fantastic comments and input into this session. It's been truly great and working together. And we've had up to about 78 participants in this session, which is fantastic, from a wide cross-section of people. So hopefully some will listen and take it back and start implementing some of these suggestions we've come up with. So there is so much that we've covered, and I will inadvertently miss out on some key points. But we heard about the level of discrimination to people with disability, the cultural discrimination, especially to women with disability, and the difficulties in rural areas. We heard about the importance of training and employment to make a difference. And again, for women working from home, how this pandemic has made a difference. And so there are positives and negatives with this pandemic in regard to accessibility for persons with disability. And it just has brought out again the inaccessibility of key websites and apps for people to live as equitably as possible in this time of COVID. And we've heard about the importance of bringing all of that attention to governments, to every sector of society, be it technical organizations, industry, to ensure that accessibility is included. And we've heard about the role of libraries in some countries. Public libraries might be lacking in others, school libraries and public libraries, and university libraries are providing accessible facilities. We also have heard so much, actually. We have heard about really the conundrum of some people question the existence of people with disability, because in some countries they are hidden away, maybe in villages. So we recognize that persons with disability are very diverse, just as anyone in the population. And we need to address that. We need to make ICT, internet services accessible and affordable. We need to find that tipping point when it comes to discrimination and how to overcome it. We need to mainstream. We need to have that inclusive design. We need to share information and strategies to lobby governments, to lobby industry, to make a change. And we've heard key points: accessibility for all, nothing without us, about us without us, so that people are decision makers. People with disability can be part of that design, policy making right from the start. We heard about moving that attitude from sympathy to empathy. And I just wanted to also mention that there is a United Nations disability inclusion strategy that was launched last year. We know about the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability. We know about the W3 Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. But this UN disability inclusion strategy was launched by the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, and he said, when we remove policies or biases or obstacles to opportunity for persons with disabilities, the whole world benefits. And that's what we're aiming to do. So thank you everyone for this stimulating discussion. And let's not just leave it here. Let's keep on working. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so
everyone.
much, Gunela.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gunela.
Let's have a quick photo.
Winston.
Please put on your video. In the meantime, thank you for the transcriber. Thank you for the sign language interpreter. Thank you so much for your help, and everybody and viewers. Amrita,
Thank you.